Savage Beats production.
We are human. Having said that, we are also part of
What up, y'all? Going live pretty soon, just getting things ready. Got a lot to talk about, y'all. Chase Ironeyes gonna be joining pretty soon. Okay. What up, y'all? I'm gonna try to keep up with all the comments, man. Alright, let's get Chase Ironeyes in here. Hope everybody's having a good day. You know, we just starting a little early, just getting everybody in here. And if you guys got questions, we're talking about movement. We had a lot of there's a lot to talk about. So, it's a spiritual movement. One thing, we got to focus on the spiritual movement, our spiritual leaders, how are we maintaining these thoughts in all circles? How are we having these talks in all circles? What's everybody talking about, man? Yeah, a lot of changes are happening, and we making change, and it's a beautiful thing. And we need to learn from all perspectives, all walks of life, as far as all the indigenous people that are, taking a stand. There's wisdom that's happening right now, and due to the pandemic, not many people can share the knowledge. Only I guess select few can get it, but by the ones who know, close to the resistance camps, close to the front lines. A lot of people are a lot of obstacles to find the truth of what's happening now. And to hear someone that's actually going out there and doing it, and not only that, has been doing it. I'm telling him to join right now. This is Chase Ironeyes, I thank y'all for joining in, taking part. But yeah, he's in here. Turn off my music. Hey.
Does it matter if this thing is horizontal or vertical?
But it's vertical. That's good. I can see.
Okay.
Perfect. Yeah. So hello, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. We're going to get things going. I was kind of already telling people, giving a little background about you. This is Chase Ironeyes joining the live today. And he has been doing activism, politics. He's been working on the front lines. I first met Chase Ironeyes over in Moccasins on the Ground. That's when I first met you face to face, shook your hand. But before that, I was following the Last Real Indians page on Facebook. This was Facebook when a lot of things was happening on Facebook. And so I was following you, and then I seen Moccasins on the Ground. I round up a bunch of friends. They got me, they picked me up, and we met at Moccasins on the Ground. And that's where I really got educated, not only from your talks and what you presented there, but also from what's happening in Lakota territory present day with the younger generations. I've heard it from a lot of older generations of what has happened, what was done, but to be in it, to actually take the personal sacrifices of family, of time, of being in ceremony, that sometimes, it takes a lot to really accept when you undertake these responsibilities that people are looking at you're speaking in such a way, people look at you, okay, he's coming back. You know, he's coming back to help us. He's coming back. He's, you know, so, you know, I'm having these talks to really highlight what it really is to be indigenous, as far as people doing it, you know, and what it takes. The things that a lot of indigenous people don't really get to tell these questions of, okay, well, this is why I'm doing it, and this is what it takes. For all the indigenous lawyers out there, I was keeping that in mind. All the young lawyers that are in school right now, educating themselves on past, present, and what should we do in the future for our indigenous people. So I was kind of thinking of how we should gear this discussion, gear this conversation, and I was keeping in mind the younger generation as far as the lawyers out there. The lawyers out there that really want to get into these fields and studies and to protect our laws, protect our rights, our freedoms, and represent our identity. And so there's a lot to talk about. But you know, from what I'm understanding, it's best to start of where you are, where you come from, and who you are, and how you introduce yourself in your way of life.
How? Oh, kola iuha chicha. I would just lila daya wachiank delo, brother. It's really, really good to see you. It's kind of like I don't know, like a time flash or something, like a time warp. You know, you see people who were part of your formation. You know, part of how identities and how consciousness are prioritized, you know, in the indigenous experience that we're all creating. We're all doing our part to further our evolution, not in the sense that, you know, we're going to something different than whatever we were before European contact, but we are certainly cognizant that we play very important roles in creating that reality. And so you're part of that, you know, circle for me. Just seeing you, you know, it does take a lot to kind of put yourself out there. For, you know, for a lot of your listeners, I'm in my mid-40s, you know what I mean? I'm an older cat now. But my name is Chase Ironeyes. I was raised on the Standing Rock Nation, and I remember you from there too, brother. But just even mentioning those early days of moccasins on the ground and the different strategic organizing that took place in order for indigenous nations to properly confront the colonial forces, the forces of extraction and you know, capitalism, however you want to put that. You know, we're all doing what we can to survive, to stay alive, and to pass on, you know, transmit to those who are coming right next to us, right after us, something stronger than we were born into. So you know, I went to law school sometimes after I left Standing Rock when I was 19 years old, and I studied political science and Indian studies. And then I didn't realize that I had developed, you know, that serious of an alcohol problem. And after college, you know, you go back to your home res because it's, you know, go off and get the skills of the colonizer and come back, help your people type thing. And I didn't have a plan to, you know, I just thought I was going to get into law school, and it didn't work out like that. And then I couldn't get a job because you got to know somebody within your own tribal nation. You know what I mean? I couldn't get a job. So I ended up going to prison for burglary, for theft of property, criminal mischief, just a bunch of, like, you know, probably 90% of the things that we go to prison for, indigenous peoples. And believe me, we're targeted. The symptoms and the tentacles of colonially imposed poverty that's not by accident. And so, you know, I took a trip. It was only for a year. I got sentenced to 18 months, but I came out of there and we had a baby. Me and my wife had a baby right before, while I was going in. And I very quickly, you know, when we come from these places of hardship, of struggle, of trauma, intergenerational trauma. However, you can, you know, put all you make it academy, or academize that as much as anyone wants to. But I was put under this, and I didn't know it at the time, but this tremendous pressure and this test to respect my family. And I chose to try to get on this path of healing, and as a part of that, somehow creation saw fit to give me another chance at law school, because I already had these felonies on my record, and I didn't think that, you know, like I was like, the last thing I could probably be is a lawyer at this point. And I went to you know, be with my wife, who she was already on a good strong path there in Denver. So I went from the res to the city, and part of that too was just to get away from, you know, the places that I used to hang out. Not so much the people, but you know, just it's tough when you're battling substance abuse, and you're you know, colonial trauma, all this stuff that we just lived through, right? We just try to come through that, and it's a miracle. It's a testament that we're here today, even, and all of our homies and the brothers and sisters that are still, you know, they're attached to it. There's no real, we're trying to heal it from within. So this is a long way of saying that, you know, it didn't come from me. Anybody out there who's trying to make a way, who's trying to navigate these forces of capital that require so much of our human lives, of our spiritual experience, of our ceremonial obligations, all of these items that you know, sometimes we sacrifice those in order to make a way and to navigate that world of capital. You know, just you're doing great. You know what I mean? Don't try not to judge yourself so harshly. I just say that because also in the work of activism, I mean, that's almost a professionalized space now. It's very, very strange for me to operate in them kind of circles, but that's the philanthropic industrial complex. It's not, it's tough out there. And so, you know, I've always been about economic empowerment, and I was kind of pushed into responding to, you know, these extractive industries confronting us on our front door. Like they're the ones that showed up and were like, hey, you know, we got this gat and it's pointed at your head, and if you don't let us build this pipeline, then some of you are going to jail. You know what I mean? Like some of you going to prison. That's how they met us, and they have the monopoly on, you know, that colonial law and order and that violence. And so we're constantly trying to stay free, and at the same time represent indigenous sovereignty or indigenous nationhood. You know, everything that our ancestors, not even our ancestors, we say that makes it sound like it's, you know, in the school books, it's like the ancient history or something, some Neanderthal shit. These are our grandfathers and our grandmothers that, you know, passed this on to us. So, and you know, we're competing out here. We're competing with TikTok. We're competing with the digital technologies that are distracting us. And so the best we can do, you got to try to, you know, focus yourself, and you know, give your attention and your energy to things that are going to promote, you know, your path. And so anyway, I just want to say that much as an intro, brother.
Yeah, that's awesome. You hit a lot of good topics on there. You know, that's where a lot of what I'm trying to get, of what it takes. You know, some things, a lot of our indigenous people are coming to their identity. They're coming back to their roots. They're watering their roots, you know, and it's painful sometimes. It's painful sometimes to see your family and to see what we don't have anymore. you know, especially in today's pandemic, you know, of we lost a lot of good people, good human beings who stood up for our people, our lands. And within these 2 years, you know, a lot of them here in the Southwest, we lost some good people in the Oak Flat movement, you know, that I'm a part of. We lost our spiritual leader, our singer, Tony Logan, you know. So, and even today was the news of passing of your brother, you know,
Yo,
Myron Dewey, you know. So it's so much is happening. So much is happening. We have to, and it should be a reminder, you know, cherish the people you have in your life. We got to honor each other. We are intelligent. We are beautiful beings. We have to cherish the moment we have with each other, especially in today's world. That's why I'm doing these lives. I feel like we don't have those conversations because of this pandemic. We can't see each other as normally as we used to, freely as we used to, on our time, their time. It's, you know, it's scary out there now with this pandemic. Anything could happen. So this is, I'm doing these lives, you know, to reconnect, to have people speak of how are you doing in this pandemic. I'm
right.
Chase.
Well, I got COVID back in March, and it was what COVID has done for us is caused us to confront, you know, the nature of life and death, and how those are connected, how, you know, indigenous knowledge systems have, we have, you know, what we need. The creator has always given us these insights and these authorities. And it's because even I learned to speak the English language first. And that is an unappreciated, you know, it's like a blueprint that comes encoded and kind of a, I don't know, maybe think of it like an operating system, or, you know, it operates the consciousness, and it gives the English thinking brain certain patterns, certain concepts, like the concept of the self, or of the ego, or even of consciousness. And I say this because I spent 14 days by myself, isolated, you know, thinking the worst. Your brain, your mind just prepares yourself for the worst. And what I realized there is that, you know, we've, according to our traditions, you know, the Lakota, but I'm sure your tradition in the Pacific Northwest, what is now called the Atlantic Coast, you know, we all have these connections to the elemental universe that the Western English thinking mind would call resources. But we have a different cosmological relationship to these elements. They're much older than us, and we've had a way to know what we are and who we are in relation to them. Not just the older elements, but, like, you know, the animals and the four-legged, the winged, the crawlers, everything, even in the waters, everything that was here before us. And that's pretty much everything, because the two-legged being in our cosmos is, you know, we're the youngest. We're the kind of the most ill-equipped to deal with the natural universe. And so that's why we seek this guidance, this inspiration, and a way of order, of divine order. I don't want to call it civilized order, but you know what I mean. We have a system to get along, whether that's through the buffalo, whether it's through corn or salmon, or, you know, whatever it is. We were gifted with a way to get along in this universe, in this reality. And for a lot of us, that's why I think, you know, nobody wants to go work for $10 an hour or anything, because it's not worth their life. So in the ways that, you know, our labor has been exploited since the industrial age, since the coming of the colonizer. And in Lakota, one of the interpretations of the word washichu, which you might have heard, especially if you saw Dances with Wolves, washi is your labor or your work, what you occupy yourself with on the daily. and ichu means to take. So one of the interpretations of this word is those who are stealing our labor, those who are taking our labor, and they're able to do this and occupy, our minds and our bodies and our spirits. And nobody's willing to give that up, give up that time, because you come to certain realizations when you're confronted with, our own mortality. And it's nothing to, some get anxious. Like I've been through the COVID did that to me, it makes you go through that, the gamut of challenges and so forth. But I read somewhere that, the same spirit that moves the galaxies, that moves the universe and the multiverse, a piece of that is within each of us, and that same spirit is there for us to take courage and to meet our world that way, and to have respect for our lineage. Some traditions say that, including ours. I've heard our old spiritual leaders say that, the human being is 2 million years old. I've heard this in the yogic traditions or some of the Vedic traditions, and 2 million years, meaning the body, this DNA, this vessel that we've inherited, that we were born into. This is over 2 million years old. So we've got these authorities, and we have the ability to deconstruct the programming. But you're absolutely right, is that not everybody's on board. Like those who are really trying to, and it's hard to be truthful with, decolonizing, as you might call it, because everyone around us is still at various levels of peeling off those layers, and you don't want to just like jump scare them into it. But certain things do, like all of the mass graves at all of the churches, from all of the boarding schools and residential schools, that has shaken the Christian influence demographic of indigenous peoples, including a lot of my relatives. And there's no way, in order to confront that, you're asking someone to confront their identity and what they hold sacred. But there are enough people out there who are just seekers, who want the truth, who make themselves available to the truth. And so I would say that COVID has given us a chance, has given humanity a chance to recognize that what the colonizer has done has set us completely off course, and it's giving us a chance to recalibrate. I think of Venice and the waterways that were so dirty before COVID hit, and all of a sudden Mother Earth begins to heal itself. It's like it's sending us signals as the two-legged species that, we've got to change course, because we're not going to destroy the earth. We're not ending the world. We're just committing in a self-induced ecocide and driving our species to the precipice, to the brink of an extinction level event. And indigenous peoples, if you're paying attention, if you seek out those connections in your protocols, whatever they are, and if maybe some of our peoples don't have their protocols anymore, like that are 200 years old, so you find a practice, because these elements are the same and everywhere. This Mother Earth or the sun or the water doesn't it cares, what language you're communing in, but they're all part of the same song. They're all part of the same path. So if some of our relatives might not be able to connect in a way that maybe their bloodline connected, then you seek out these other pathways, and that leads to healing or new consciousness. You know what I mean? On a neurological, spiritual level, things are happening. That's why we, for instance, fast, or why the sweat lodge, or some sort of a similar ceremony is permeates indigenous cultures. So that path of life is much needed at this time. You know, I thought indigenize the world. You know what I mean? The title, the way that those concepts flow together. People are hungry. People are thirsty because inside, you know, intrinsically, we're trying to deconstruct this imbalance, this dissonance that goes on here. You know, when we're fighting in our own mind at 3 a.m. in the morning or whatever, when you can't sleep, you know, we're all going through this. We're all having these existential crises, and we're all asking ourselves the big questions. So we have to be in a position where we've got to just respect where we, you know,
Little one.
respect our traditions, and recognize that we have everything that the colonizer told us we didn't, and just stay open to that. And again, like, I'm in the learning process too. You know what I mean? I don't know it all. I just try to keep an open mind as we go through it.
Yeah, that's what a lot of people are realizing. This pandemic highlighted a lot of things that are not being utilized in communities, such as resources. Communities, the cities that natives live in, surrounded by, we don't have the even our tribes, we don't even have the resources, you know, to when these pandemics hit, we're not ready, you know. And so when that happens, the people really have to look within and dig deep, because a lot of people are still looking for help, even from their own tribal councils, you know, with stimulus money, you know, with just some type of resources, you know, even not just here in the United States, but down south, the indigenous communities there, you know, their resources are not ready for these pandemics. So what in return thrives? Our traditions, our survival foods, the foods, our indigenous food systems, you know, and our culture of showing affection, how we help each other, you know, being empathetic with each other, of all people, because we are all suffering. I think within these pandemics, we thrive, you know, we thrive because we really have to look within. And for the world, they really all had to do that. People really had spiritual growth. And, you know, and for the ones that survived, the survivors of COVID, you know, that was really something to really sit with, you know, as you're sitting there, you really don't know. We hear all these different types of effects of different people, and it sounds really very scary. It is scary, and so we've got to walk with a lot of true intention, and a lot of people are having a very hard time of finding what that is for them and why they're at this point in life, you know. And I'm glad that you're on this path, and you are utilizing these social technologies to keep people together, to keep the focus, because you have knowledge, you have experience, and learning the language of dominance. You know, I heard you say that language, the language of dominance. This is very key also, not just within this English language of socializing, but the language of law. How has this uprising with its indigenous people, there's been a lot of changes. Do you have any examples of these changes?
Ever since the 70s, I'll tell you this, that I moved to the Pine Ridge Reservation about sometime in 2018. I moved here, and for some people, they might not have seen the movie Thunderheart, or they might not have watched Incident at Oglala, but there was a COINTELPRO instigated civil war here, where the foreign entities always, ever since the English language kind of was forced on us, they're able to manipulate us and divide us on a psychological level, and even on a neurological level. If we only stay in English, there's a certain kind of potential of reality that is available there, and there's nothing wrong with that. you know, we inherited that. I inherited that, and it took everything in me to, and I'm nowhere near, you know, where I need to be, even for a functional command of La Colia. And like my daughter has been in immersion schools, and she says that I talk like a toddler, you know, and she's always correcting me because, but you got to be willing to try, and you've got to be willing to fail. That's the only way that we're going to connect to those potentials within us. This is why a lot of our, you know, songs or prayer songs, prayer might not be the right word for that, but, you know, sending a voice. Inside each of our languages, inside each of our songs is encoded certain worldviews, certain instructions. They truly, languages are truly are the blueprint for a consciousness. To, you know, the way that one would interpret and perceive and express the universe, or whatever is coming in through the senses. One way that I've witnessed things changing is that since Standing Rock, I mentioned the 1970s because, you know, I was born in 78. So I was born at the tail end of everything that we went through there. And I mean, people came from the Southwest. They came from all over Turtle Island to Pine Ridge because there was a renaissance happening. There was a resurgence happening. And where before there were instances of, you know, subjugation, where there were items known as the courts of Indian offenses, where they installed, you know, our own native people to be judges, to be the police, to be the arms of the state and the institutions which were designed to take land from us, expropriate from us, and complete and erase us. And so you could go to jail if you were, you know, doing some sort of traditional native stuff. If you were in a sweat lodge or Sundance or a naming ceremony or a giveaway ceremony or whatever it was, we were completely criminalized. And so a lot of our people kind of still carry that apprehension. It's a sense of like, you know, it's in addition to how we're already taught to be wary and fearful of the cops. For instance, every Native person I know, when they were growing up as young children, their parents would say things like, "Sit down, you know, the cops are coming. I'm gonna tell the cops on you. I'm gonna," you know, and that came from these forced boarding school and these churches. For, you know, you behave or the boogeyman's gonna get you. These churches are gonna show up at your doorstep and with the force of the law, and they're going to snatch you. They're going to kidnap you. And you know, it's hard to deal with that level of programming. But Standing Rock and the way that Indigenous nations are kind of, we're always going to be on the front line because we're closer to the natural universe, closer to the sacred, because our people are conducting these ceremonies. We're upholding our side of the covenant as the two-legged species here, which is bound to, you know, we're bound to protect the ecosystems and the watersheds and the items that need to have their life that we depend on. You know, when for water or even for food, we depend on a healthy Mother Earth. And so when those things are threatened, we're gonna go and rise up in defense of that. But in the meantime, like how you're saying with COVID, things are not easy. Like we are in a debilitated position where we're not able to control our economies or have self-determined, self-sustaining ways of life and really providing our own food, which it seems like it's easy to say that. It's hard on a scale of how we live in Indian country today, it's hard to deploy those strategies because, and it's also because of the government systems, the English thinking and speaking institutions of law, politics, economy, the Indian Reorganization Act. Like nobody is trying to challenge our oppressor. We know the chains are there, but most people are just like, oh, that's gonna scar over. Let's just try to be the best of whatever we can be inside the colonizer system. And then there are some who, we can't sit right with it. So we're constantly trying to change course and allow for different systems of authority, different ways to judge ourselves and to assign identities to ourselves. So when what gives me that encouragement is another renaissance that is happening through Standing Rock, through Line 3, through Keystone Pipeline, through Oak Flat, even through the Sacred Peaks there. I don't know what the traditional name is, but the San Francisco Peaks. And every time Indigenous peoples become aware or respect their own consciousness, and we have a prophecy from the Lakota, one of our great leaders, his name is Frank Foolscrow, who said, if the world would only put lands back in Indigenous hands, the world can begin to heal. And this requires us, though. I mean, prophecy is one thing, and it's like prophecies don't fulfill themselves. They require hard work and sacrifice, and hard work and sacrifice requires we as Indigenous peoples to work with each other, which is the hardest thing to do in these colonized spaces, because we can't get away from the level that we are made to do without, and the level that we internally oppress each other, and how it's hard to just celebrate another native that is either getting put on or putting themselves on, like because capitalism is competitive, and we've been deliberately made dependent. They created a culture of dependency, and with that comes a lot of hating and a lot of judging, and not a lot of, hey man, just get back up and try it again. You know what I mean? We judge each other far too harshly. That's just within Indigenous circles. You know what I mean? Sometimes the outside don't know what the levels to which we're doing that inside of our circles. But I'm just saying that, throughout my maybe decade inside of the culture of sovereignty, the culture of activism, liberation, consciousness building, Indigenous people we've got to forgive each other. Like I've been through, I've made mistakes, and I've had to ask to be forgiven by people that I respect. And I've also had wrongs instigated or trespasses instigated against me, and I had to just let that flow.
Oh, sorry, Chihuahua. Stop! Someone's at my door.
Bro, the dog's
yeah, it's my husky. He's ready, bro. He likes what you're saying.
He hears a new voice. He's like, what the hell? Who the hell is that?
Hey, sorry about that.
That's a long way to say that how I see, things changing in real life, and what is happening is that the world is kind of is depending on Indigenous metaphysical resurgence. The world is depending on each and every one of us to connect to our strengths and the forces that can heal us, because we're also dealing with a lot. And I'm not asking anybody to forgive the colonizer, but they are depending on us finding our path, because they've been programmed for 5,000 years. They've been lost, and so that's part of the compassion that I have, and that's also gotten me into some trouble. You know what I mean? But I'm also trying to think on a grand scale how we can not only save ourselves, but this is our planet, bro, and we got children coming up right behind us. So that's why I come from that spirit.
That's good, bro. I'm glad you're speaking from experience, and not afraid to share what your journey has led you on, because we all got to see that we are all human beings. There's nothing different from you and I. We all struggle. We make mistakes. We learn our lessons, and that's a part of our teachings. That's a part of our way of life. We honor those mistakes. And what did you learn? Now we can do better. We can share that. We can speak about it, head up high. We learn, and that's what it takes for people who want to take the responsibility. You got to learn about humiliation. As a leader, humility will be your greatest lesson. And there's many ways to say how that is. First of all, does your spiritual leader dance? Can he dance? Can he sing? Can he laugh? Can he enjoy himself? Can he pick up his children in front of all the people and give them a hug? Can he be proud of his life, his wife? Can he be proud of where he's from? With what little he has or how much he has, is he happy? Is he happy? I think we're getting so caught up in what a leader should be, who knows this. We're so caught up in the intellectual side of our being. We really have to sit down with each other and pray with each other, sing with each other, dance with each other, laugh with each other. It's a hard time, but that is medicine for you. That is those memories we create with each other. As we look back on life, will be medicine for our kids, for our future. So that's we got to honor these times. And I'm that's why I'm glad you're speaking from experience, because there's a lot of people are trying. A lot of people. How can I help? How can I help? It's like, okay, that is a big ask, and I expect you to come back when you speak to Indigenous, So it's something that it's a lifelong relationship. It's a lifelong relationship. The people that are supporting us, you're with us till the end. You're with us. You will always have a seat in our circle. If you come with respect and understanding, and an open heart, open mind, because we all have. I'm Dene. When I go to your territories, I have to be mindful of where I'm at. I have to be very mindful of where I step. A lot of things get invited to. Is it my place? Maybe I don't. So we have to be very mindful of how we help, when to help, and just be mindful that all land is sacred, and we have to walk very, very gentle, and so there's a lot of young people coming back to that, and a lot of people that are older people that are coming back to that, because they've been caught up with work, raising their kids, and now they have time. And some of them are raising their kids with this knowledge, with this wisdom. Did you have that in your family growing up?
Right. No, I did not. Well, I'll tell you that, my mom went to a boarding school, as did her mom. And these boarding schools, like, they changed us on that atomic level and traumatized us. And horrified us. And so I will say that, my mom found her path in this culture, in Lakota culture, the ceremonial path, or the red road, sometimes called the red road. She found that, and she was able to seek a spiritual liberation in her time. And then when she had her children, we were still growing up in the hood, so to speak, and she didn't teach us, our protocols and the ancient ways. She taught us them in the sense that she left it open for us. She would take us to ceremonies, but wouldn't explain, what's the supernatural things that were happening, or maybe those things that challenge the human mind's understanding of the laws of physics and the way reality works. Like the ceremonies that Indigenous peoples have transcend those limitations. That's why on a vibrational level, on a frequency level, on a wave level, the song, I don't like to think of the drum as a technology, but because that was somebody's skin at one time, that drum. And when you hit it with the ichabu and it makes that noise, that is having an impact on the unseen environment that you know, that we're not perceiving maybe like we used to, or that we're interacting with on levels that we're capable of. But so she would take me to these ceremonies, and I wouldn't really know what was going on, but I remember you know, what it was like being inside of there, and having my sense of reality challenged from a young, you know, just a little boy, like maybe 5, 6 years old. But she didn't like sit us down and be like, hey, these are the songs that go with this ceremony, or this is what you have to do. And in fact, this is why I say, like, don't judge yourself too harshly, because my mom, I'm blessed that she's still on this plane with us, in this realm. She still goes to church. She still goes to, you know, this Christian church where I almost went to grade school, to a first grade. I was supposed to start first grade at this mission school. You know what I mean? And when you think about it, and that's what I mean, like, you got to be willing to ruin Christmas or ruin Thanksgiving. You know what I mean? And but doing it for decolonial reasons, not because, you know, you're half shot or whatever. I'll tell you a little bit about what my experiences were. So I will say that, you know, I wasn't given kind of a pathway, but I was raised inside those environments that where the tentacles of poverty culture kind of are too close, and they have too much to do with how we're being raised. But what I will say is that, you know, I was given an open mind from the jump, because I was given access to ceremony and to these protocols where song, the drum, and language, and sometimes dance. You know, these are forms, modes of expressions, modalities, vehicles in themselves. So, like, you're right about that. We have, you know, sages. You know, we wouldn't call them gurus, but, you know, I had teachers that are younger than me, and so I'm always trying to pay attention, and I learned that from being raised just kind of in an open atmosphere in my upbringing there on Standing Rock, in HUD housing, with, you know, every HUD house has that same damn tile floor with the wooden beams in the basement, and I'm sure people who might be listening have experienced these places. I had to learn. I kind of got on the path of self-discovery. I wasn't paying attention to my life really until you know, maybe I was 16, and I read the first book called Black Elk Speaks. That I was working at Crazy Horse Mountain at the time, a teenager, and that kind of, I always knew, you know, I'd been to Sweat Lodge, had proximate and ready access to ceremony, but not. It was more, you know, hood culture and colonial culture, dependency culture, rather than self-determined ceremonial ways of life. But I had access to it, and I knew to respect it. So that, you know, I was always challenging my mom. She probably wanted to slap me the amount of time that I questioned her, and just was always on her, and would never just take her for her word. You know what I mean? I was always trying to ask for further explanation. I was one of them guys that needed proof of God. You know, it wasn't until way after, I was like, well, I don't need proof of God, man. God needs proof of me. God needs to know, and you know, God, put that in quotation marks, because we all have a different word, but I use that just for ease of conversating. That, you know, that those, the creative forces need to know that we're willing to step forward, or that we're willing to do the work on their behalf. And it took a long time to learn that. So I'm able to identify, you know, with those who were, maybe they come from that culture too, and to see each other hit 30 years old, you know, was shit. Man, we all got, I got friends who are no longer with us because they didn't hit 40. Some of them didn't hit 30, some didn't hit 40. One of my best bros, you know, he was only 42, man, and colonization took him, colonialism took him, you know, all of these habits, the way that we doubt ourselves, the way that we denigrate ourselves. You know, it's a programming to cause an internalized dissonance and a self-destruction. So, you know, I wish that I could have been raised in a way that you know, where I was fluent in Lakota, for instance, or even another language. Shit, our ancestors, our grandfathers and grandmothers spoke many different indigenous languages, and we probably traded with you guys.
Oh yeah, we did.
Here, man, shit, we could walk to each other. We could walk ocean to ocean, pole to pole. Like we need to recognize our greatness and our brilliance and our strength. Like and that's a hard thing to do, man. When we don't learn any of that in school. So I was a challenge, but by the graces, I made it through, you know, that period of life, and I made it through those other challenges. And I don't like to preach to anybody because, you know, part of me misses partying, you know what I mean? Part of me misses messing up, and that is something that I've had to deconstruct. And so I'm not sabotaging myself or sabotaging my path based on my weaknesses or my appetites or my inclinations. You know what I mean? That's what I do. But man, I've fallen and I've had to get back up, and so I'm gonna fall again. But you know, now I'm a little bit older, and it's just experience. And like you were saying, we got to learn from our mistakes, man. That's why we were given another chance, you know, to learn. And so it's, you know, that's I just want to. That's why I like living on the res too. It's hard to live on the res after you go away and you get educated, and your people kind of treat you like an outcast. And we all deal with that on certain kind of levels. Oh, this cat thinks it's too good now, and I don't like it that I lost like a lot of my res slang from spending a lot of time in these academic institutions and so forth. But you just have to put that to the side and reintegrate, because we indigenous cultures need each other in order to continue to live on.
Yep, that is true. You know, we got to just be ourselves, accept ourselves, you know, like you said, don't be too hard on yourself. I think there's so much when we come back and start watering our roots and start coming back and realizing, asking mom and dad about grandma and grandpa, and then the story, how they came together. You know, when we start hearing these stories, you know, we think about a lot. And sometimes it hurts, but it's good knowledge. It's good knowledge. You got to know your trauma, that what is in us is in our genes. It's in, you know, so we got to speak to that trauma, pray to that trauma. So when we have kids, or when we pass on knowledge, pass on our energies, you know, our prayers, it's not so, I guess, tainted, you know. We got to be spiritually clean, mentally clean. These are how we live our daily life. And as one of these things is part of a lot of people today, you know, in modern world, music. I have one question in mind, because you have been a big supporter for Native hip hop, Native artists. You do conferences, you do your podcast, you're highlighting Native hip hop artists, up and coming, established, your friends, new friends, you know. So what has hip hop done for you? When did you first, and two-part, what has hip hop done for you, and when did you hear your first Native hip hop artist?
Whoa, man! I think I grew up, you know, cassette tapes. My older brother was you know, hard rock, you know, with the Motley Crue and Dokken and Metallica, or the early Metallica. So like, you know, on the res, break dancing and hip hop came for me with Public Enemy, you know, Beastie Boys, Kool Moe Dee. Like, I had all these cassette tapes, and just the lyricism and wordplay gave me a chance to access other realities as, you know, as they were going on. There was no internet, so like you had to go to the music store and pick up whatever new album was dropping from somebody on a cassette tape. And then I remember thinking CDs were like this unimaginable upgrade, and then the old MP3 players. But I was exposed to hip hop from a very young age, and I knew that, hip hop also has it's Afro-Indigenous roots. I mean, it's the drum. It's graffiti is on all of our sites. That is a form of symbologic representation of the human path. So there's all these aspects, and then when you watch one of our dancers dancing, they're moving to that same cadence, to that same beat. So for me, I fell in love with hip hop as a kid, 6, 7, 8 years old, and I didn't think that it was something for me to like access, but I didn't put myself out of its range. It was just something that was part of me culturally, like part of my identity as I was coming up, and just like in the same way, all of the older natives, like they talk smack about us listening to hip hop. Oh, you guys are listening to that black music. Well, at the same time, you're dressed like a cowboy and you got a bunch of cows and you're living some sort of wannabe Christian cowboy rancher lifestyle, drinking beers in some barfly pub. At the same time, these guys were judging us as young people who were expressing ourselves differently. And I think Lightfoot came to our reservation, Standing Rock, when I was like, 13 or 14 years old. He came and did a performance there. And so that was the first time that I had kind of been put on to the fact that this wasn't just urban culture. This wasn't just, it is black culture, Afro-Indigenous culture. It wasn't just that it is a mode of expression that is available to the human spirit. And because oppression, slavery, struggle, because those forces surrounded, coming from the plantations to the gospels, to blues, to even rock and roll, man. You ever see the movie Rebel, or I think it's called Rebel, but it's about the indigenous influence on pop culture. And hip hop came right from that same DNA. So in a very real way, hip hop is, we have as much access to it as anybody, but we also have to respect the black creatives, who started it in its modern sense in the late 70s. Like I remember breakdancing to Herbie Hancock. I remember breakdancing to many of those early, like there weren't even no MCs on them. They were just like beats and different synthesizers and so forth. So like for us, dance, song, that kind of artistic expression, that is part of who we are. And people, it's gonna take other forms. We're gonna introduce different instruments to it, different cadences, and we have to give ourselves that freedom of expression, and because it's our spirit expressing itself, and sometimes that's the way it needs to be. And I liked how hard hip hop went. It spoke to that spirit in me that I wanted to smack my colonizer. You know what I mean? I didn't want to take nothing off of any of them cats. Like we want to stand up, and this music was doing that. This music was saying, "Look it, get up." You know what I mean? FTP. F you, I won't do what you tell me. Some of those that burn crosses are the same that run forces. They were all that consciousness was activating certain aspects of my experience that I couldn't deny. And so I still go listen to hardcore hip hop, man. It won't leave. It's and at the same time I'm trying to learn my language. I'm really trying to learn songs. Lakota songs, traditional ceremonial songs, and we can do it all. You know what I mean? We got to give ourselves that latitude.
Yep, that is good expression. And I was at a show once up there, and your son got up on the mic.
Oh yeah,
I remember that, bro. Everybody was cheering for him, and he started busting his flows. I was like, dang, man. So I knew that, and you loved hip hop. Hip hop had had meaning to you, has roots with you, you know. And I see it within your work, how you promote your podcast, Chase.
Right.
Cut to the Chase podcast. You guys need to check that out. It's a real intellectual, in depth. You know, man, it highlights so many movements, so many different things, current issues. You know, so give his podcast a follow. Check him out, man. It's something to listen to. It's not like your other daily podcasts. You know, this is really a national news, international news coverage.
Right.
You know, and some on the ground footage too. You know, from some of your correspondents. You know, so you got a lot going on. What got you into? You know, for me, I'm doing podcasts. I'm trying to get into that. You know, like that's a whole nother field of learning, gearing
Right.
up for all the software, the programming. What got you into podcasting?
Well, I used to do this old show like back in right at the time Last Real Indian started. This is before you could go live on Facebook. This is before, I mean, Twitter was probably around. There definitely was no TikTok. It was right after MySpace. You know what I mean? This was back in the day. Back in the day, I used to do this show where I just talked in the camera, and I called it Res Roundup, and I would try to take these different issues that were impacting the indigenous experience, and I just didn't have the technical team, you know, around me because it's you need these technical skills. You need to, like, editing, graphic designing, audio engineering, just your basic kind of a tech aptitude is going to go a long way. And indigenous country, like, we have a bottleneck. You know, there's a lot of voices. There's not a lot of like technicians who are really nerding out on how to make these things happen. And I will say that there's even another level of it where it's getting access to the mainstream, to the mainstream capital, where indigeneity meets the mainstream. That's kind of where I've been on enough kind of news shows and different things like this that I know that the mainstream comes calling for their Indian when it's relevant. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But I wanted to create a place where we can speak our minds and we determine how we meet those mainstream forces and access to capital. What I was getting at is that podcasting, you know, right now, you got to be willing to do it, whether there's one listener or whether there's 10,000 listeners when you're doing it, because part of it is you know, just like the reason why a bird sings or why an artist creates is that there's something in them that they've got to express, and it is hard, but there's also this whole other world where there is pitches. There's pitch decks, there's platforms like Spotify, Audible, Tribeca. I mean, there's people out there who are looking for podcasts, but you have to know how to get into those worlds. And those things aren't readily available. And like, you know, we see what happens when we get access to mainstream money. I mean, we got Reservation Dogs on Hulu because we had, I've never met or even, I didn't know of Taiki Waititi until, really until Reservation Dogs. I just didn't have a chance to learn who he was. High impact brother. And, you know, I don't know how those projects are financed, but access to that kind of capital, we've got to get that in the grassroots. And it's hard to do because we're all out here struggling. You know what I mean? We're struggling for access, recognition, viewership. That leads to, we hate to say it, but it leads to capital. It leads to monetizing our consciousness and whatever we're sharing. And that's a tough thing for a lot of people who don't. That interferes with the creative inspiration and with the art of it. So I understand that, you know, sometimes you are going to have to go to the grassroots to find that perspective, but I'm also very much trying to take it to other levels where that can increase our sphere of influence, because it's part of it is because of that, the way that I see we're on this path, like it's a missionary path. Like we're trying to assist people in their deconstruction of their programming, their decolonization, their spiritual liberation. I really feel like we're doing that work. We're on that same path. So podcasting for me, we're 30 episodes deep. It takes commitment. It's labor, but it's also necessary. So like when you hit me up, I was like, man, I saw that you were doing this. I didn't get a chance to listen to any of the full episodes, but now we need to figure out how to bring viewership, to your art, to mine, to I know the brothers and sisters at Native Roots Radio. Like there's a lot of us who are creating content and who are willing to kind of step out there and be vulnerable and to share our perspectives, our experiences, and everything that goes with that. And we just got to keep supporting each other. It's hard to do because everybody's I don't want to get to the place where I feel like I'm competing with people, even though we're out there just trying to share and uplift consciousness. So that's kind of how I'm able to continue to do it without burning out.
Yeah, I like that, brother. One last question. I know it might be a big one, but it's something that spoke out to me now. And as we resist, as our movements begin to create momentum, and these cities, these border towns, these occupied settlements on our land start taking recognition, and we start really utilizing and breaking down their policies, their states, their jurisdictions. They start opposing us. They start really stopping us. Here in Arizona, when the Black Lives Movement was starting out, Arizona, they seen California shutting down highways. Arizona was rapidly put a policy in: you shut down a highway, it's a class 1 felony. And then there's more protests. Okay, the people take the streets. Now here in Arizona, if you do not have a permit, you get a felony. If you don't go with the process, you get a felony. So there's so many obstacles. Each state is setting precedent for each other of how to oppose what they are calling eco-terrorism, indigenous movements, the Indian threat, that's stopping progress in their way of thinking. And that goes to HR 1374. Can you explain what that is, and what does that set precedents for other states?
Yeah, definitely. That's a very good question. If you notice, after Standing Rock, after No Dapple, those same forces, these guys, they're not like American companies, or they're not Canadian companies, they're not Australian companies. These are just big conglomerates. Like this is the corporate state, and they're trying to push us toward fascism, which to a large extent, because the majority of people are sleeping right now, they are able to get away with a lot of this stuff because nobody knows. It's hard. In order to oppose them, you're going to be targeted. They're going to try to concoct some criminal charge against you. Like at No Dapple, I was charged with a felony for inciting a riot when all I did was 2 Facebook live feeds, invited journalists and lawyers and whoever to come, bear witness on the front line with everyone that was there that day. But as a result of that, they're fluid. Capital is fluid, and it's insidious, and it creeps into everything. And so 36 or 37 different state legislatures passed these kinds of laws, like HR 1374 is permitting states to declare private energy infrastructure, like pipelines, like pumping stations, like everything that we're locking down to, everything that we're who's the trespass of which we're defending against. They say if you, in the same way that BLM, Black Lives Matter, caused this uptick in further and extremely criminalizing this sort of constitutionally protected behavior, the right to peaceably assemble, the right to free speech, And as indigenous nations, we're older than those concepts of constitutional rights and so forth. We're supposed to have treaty rights and inherent rights, but because of the way that, we're 120 years deep into the colonial process. So their systems of law and order are designed to protect capital and property. And when you see this at line 3, somebody locks down to a pipeline, they delay construction, they're now charging them with felonies saying, you stole from this oil company in excess of, the hour shutdown costed $10,000. So you are going to be charged with theft of property in that amount, which is a felony amount. And this fight, there's a line, and whether we like it or not, we're all born into a spiritual battle. We're born into a very real confrontation, but some of us don't want to recognize it. And me too. Like, shit, I want to raise my family. I want to know the power of peace. I want to know what it's like to sleep securely and to not have to worry about confronting the beast on a daily level, on a monthly level, or what have you. But we are in this fight. Look at what they're trying to declare us terrorists. They already sentenced Jessica Resnicek to 8 years in prison because of the property damage that was inflicted on the Dakota Access Pipeline. Ruby Montoya, they're trying to declare her a terrorist for DAPL. And every time we step up, the system, because they have a monopoly on violence and on incarceration, not to mention private security and, tapping into all of our devices and all that stuff. What we have to fall back on is that not only is our path righteous, but according to their own laws, we're supposed to be protected in defending, our water, our lands, our sacred sites. And somebody in the comment section mentioned earlier that we're not accessing our powers. We're not accessing the sacred sites as much as we can be. And this comes just simply by placing yourself in those sacred places. Think of them as having higher spiritual reception, or however you got to think of them. They're important to us for a reason. So I agree that, we've got to put ourselves in those environments, but at the same time, we've got to do everything we can to build this allyship, because they intend to imprison us, and they intend to prevent any kind of progress we're going to make to dethrone, this system of imbalance that is killing the human species right now. So just, we've got to take courage in that respect.
Yeah, and that's one thing for everybody that's, organizing, keep up with those councils, man, because they are planning against us. They are planning against us, even into these up and coming fights. There's so many going on nationwide, and this world is at a threshold. These world economies, they're playing the media like we need resources, we need this, or it's the apocalypse. And here we are, the indigenous nations, with such rights to defend and protect. Our lands are the last untouched, pretty much. And so I hope people really research about these laws. Every state might be a little different. They might word it a little different with the language of dominance, but you have to understand they are planning legal protection to throw you in as a terrorist. This is something that stays with you, and for the ones standing up and taking those fights, you have to honor them too. We cannot forget our prisoners of war locked up and give them support, wherever the fight is, wherever the front line is. If there's anything else you would like to promote, share at this time.
I would, my podcast, you can check that podcast out. It's available wherever you listen to podcasts. I think we anchored it, so to speak, on this site called anchor.fm. You can subscribe there. It won't cost you anything. But even though I don't know if you have a system set up to where people can support you, become financial subscribers. Like I will share, what you're doing on any platform I'm on, because we need to make sure that those who are telling the truth and those who are critical. You know, when we talk about celebrating our land defenders and our water protectors, look how we've been trained to celebrate United States military personnel. And I get into this with a lot of my relatives, a lot of my friends, but those are my relatives and friends who came out of Dick Cheney's oil war. They quickly realized that we're not over there for patriotic reasons or to defend freedom. We have to be, you know, it's a hard job to be critical, to want to tell the truth. So those who are willing to do that, we've got to support them in whatever way possible. Maybe it's not becoming a financial subscriber to Indigenize the World. Maybe it's just sharing the stream. It's liking it. It's commenting it. There's things that you give your time and energy to. That's what you're going to help grow, even within yourself. So, you know, just link with us, with me, wherever I'm at online, because you know, I intend to keep creating too, as long as I'm given the responsibility to do it. That is part of our path, just like it was part of Myron's path, Myron Dewey, and your brother that you were saying, you know, we're not here for a long time, so we got to do the best we can with what we have in the time that we were born into, and that's what we can do. That's what we have to offer. So it's part of our responsibility, and you know, give thanks the best you can. It's hard, you know. Life is difficult. The human condition is difficult. This is why we were given ceremonies to help us navigate this tough place. But try to find the places to smile. You know, the places to be happy. The places that refill you or replenish you or refresh you. Those are extremely important too. So I just want to thank you for having me on, brother. This has been amazing.
Yeah, thank you for joining. A lot of inspiration, hearing your story, hearing what your experience, your wisdom from the front lines, and also doing the work, organizing for yourself, what it takes, you know, what it takes to stand up, you know, and the cause and effect of your words. We got to be mindful, you know, we got to be spiritually clean, you know, we got to prepare. If we're going to fight, we got to prepare. We can't just get out the door with our chonies on. We don't do that, you know. We get ready, spiritually ready, mentally ready, physically ready. You know, we got to prepare. And in the words of John Trudell, rest in peace, we got to think. We got to think. We have been reactionary for too long. We got to think. We got to stay always a step ahead. We can never fall back, you know. And it gets hard sometimes for the ones organizing, for the ones trying to be conscious of the day, of what's happening north, south, east, and west, within the news, within how they find their information, their knowledge of what's happening to all indigenous people worldwide. You know, it gets hard, but we got to keep prayer. We got to keep praying through the water, through the mountain, through however you identify with the land. Keep that in mind at all times, because our brothers and sisters, it's life or death right now for a lot of us. And they're in that mind too, of giving them, finding that connection. And I thank you, Chase. I commend you on all your work, and I thank you for joining us and doing this live.
All right, brother. Anytime.
Have a good night.
Yep, you
Peace
too.
out, bro.
Later to everyone listening.
Peace out, guys. Yes, and that was Chase Ironeyes, you know, a very intellectual man. I hope a lot of people gained a lot of information. And of course, there's a lot to talk about when we talk to a lawyer. I want to hit him with a lot of topics, but, you know, I'm trying to just capture his story, capture his words, capture what he experienced. You know, there's a lot to talk about: sovereignty. What are these concepts, these policies? But it was good just to hear his story, how he's been handling the pandemic. And that's what I'm here to do. Share that you are not alone within your process. There's people out here grieving, mourning. There's people out here healing from trauma. There's people out here hurting. The cuts are deep right now and fresh, and we're not alone. And I thank y'all for tuning in. Until next time, tomorrow, we got another amazing Indigenous woman artist, Miss Shells, powerful voice. And we're going to talk a lot about her journey and what got her into music. She has a story to tell. And for all Indigenous women out there, looking for empowerment, looking for words, and even women out there who want to get into hip hop, you know. So it's good to even hear Chase talk about the influence of hip hop. You know, he supports us. He supported me, you know, and this is another reason why we got to document our stories and just express ourselves. And I hope you guys do that. Find a way to connect with the earth and sky, and from east, south, west, north. You know, I thank y'all for tuning in. Until next time, tomorrow afternoon, Miss Shells, tune in, y'all. Indigenize the World is out.